Ever found yourself just wishing for an easier way to handle money? Skipping the banks, the online wallets, all those third-party apps. Imagine if sending or receiving funds just worked seamlessly. Well, the thing is, that kind of system isn't just hypothetical. It's actually here, and it's really changing things. Today, we're doing a deep dive into blockchain and cryptocurrency, our mission to unpack the source material, figure out how these things actually work, why they even came about, and look at their pretty surprising impact, basically giving you the shortcut to being genuinely well-informed on this. Okay, let's get into it.
Absolutely. And it's more than just, a new payment method. It's really a fundamental shift in thinking about value, about trust, and, who's actually in control of transactions. Understanding why this started is key to seeing just how big a deal it is.
Exactly. And to really get why digital currencies became, so necessary, let's think about a situation you've probably been in. Picture 4 friends. Let's call them Jack, Ted, Sam, and Phil. They're splitting a dinner bill. Jack pays up front. Everyone owes him their share. So Phil sends his share online, no problem, easy. But then Ted and Sam try, and nope, transaction failed. Their bank gives some vague reason, technical issues maybe. We've all been there, right? These traditional online transfers can fail for so many reasons. It could be a technical glitch at the bank itself, maybe an account got hacked, or you hit some random daily transfer limit you didn't know about, or worse, those extra transfer fees suddenly pop up. It's just clunky.
Right. And these everyday headaches, these little friction points in how we handle money, they weren't just annoying. They really highlighted a gap, a need for something different, something fundamentally new. It really set the stage for crypto.
And that's exactly where cryptocurrency comes into the picture. It really grew out of trying to solve these specific problems. So at its core, cryptocurrency is basically digital or virtual money that runs on this technology called blockchain. And that foundation, the blockchain, gives it some really powerful features, like it's basically impossible to counterfeit. Plus, and this is huge, it doesn't need a central authority. No bank, no government controlling it. And it's all protected by really strong, complex encryption. Now, there are thousands of these cryptos out there, Litecoin, Ethereum, Zcash, you name it. But Bitcoin is still kind of the king. It really started it all.
That lack of a central authority, that's the revolutionary part. Think about it for centuries. Money meant governments, central banks. Cryptocurrency just flips that entirely. It decentralizes control. Power shifts from these big institutions more towards individuals. It's not just about, faster payments. It's changing the whole power dynamic in finance.
So how does this blockchain tech actually pull that off? How does it prevent all those issues we talked about? Let's revisit those dinner friends. This time, Phil, Ted, and Sam are sending Jack 2 Bitcoins each. And just for argument's sake, let's say Phil, Ted, and Sam start with 3 Bitcoins and Jack has 5. Okay, so Phil sends his 2 Bitcoins to Jack. That transaction gets recorded instantly. Think of it like creating a digital record or page in a ledger. We call this a block. And this block permanently locks in the details. Who sent what, the amount, and importantly, how many Bitcoins everyone has now. So Jack's wallet updates to 7 Bitcoins, Phil's down to 1. It's all recorded right there in the block. Okay, now Sam sends his 2 Bitcoins. A new block is created for that transaction. Same deal, it records the details, the updated balances. Then Ted sends his, another block. And here's the really clever bit, the chain part. These blocks aren't just separate records, they're linked together cryptographically. Each new block contains a reference, like a digital fingerprint, of the block that came right before it. It creates this unbreakable sequential chain of transactions.
Exactly. And this chain of records, this linked sequence of blocks, that's what we call the ledger. But the crucial difference is this ledger isn't stored in one central place like a bank's database. It's distributed. It's shared among everyone involved. So in our example, Jack, Phil, Ted, and Sam would all have an identical copy of this ledger. That's why it's called a public distributed ledger. And that sharing, that transparency is the absolute foundation of how blockchain works.
Okay, that sounds incredibly transparent and secure, I guess. But what does that actually mean for stopping fraud? Like, what if Phil, who only has 1 Bitcoin left now, tries to be sneaky and send Jack 2 more?
Good question. See, if Phil tries that, his transaction request goes out to the network. But everyone else, Ted, Sam, Jack, anyone else on this network, they all have their own copy of the ledger. They can instantly see, wait, Phil's balance is only 1 Bitcoin? His transaction doesn't match the shared record, so the network automatically flags it as invalid. It simply won't go through. The consensus rejects it.
I see.
And forget about hacking it after the fact. A hacker would need to change the block on well, basically every copy of the ledger simultaneously, which is practically impossible.
Huh?
Plus, the data inside each block is locked down with really complex cryptography. Any change attempt is immediately obvious and gets rejected. So, yeah, simple way to put it is, blockchain is a collection of records linked together very strongly, highly resistant to being changed, and protected using cryptography.
Okay, that makes sense. So, digging into the mechanics a bit more, how does a specific Bitcoin transaction actually work? Let's stick with Phil sending to Jack. You mentioned keys. Everyone has two keys, right? A public one and a private one.
Correct.
The public key is like your bank account number or maybe an email address, something people use to send to you. It's public knowledge.
Mm-hmm. It's your receiving address on the network.
But the private key, it's the secret one. That's
Yeah.
yours and yours alone, like a password, or maybe the actual key to your personal safe.
Exactly. It's what proves you control the Bitcoins associated with your public key. You never share your private key.
Right. So when Phil wants to send those Bitcoins, what happens technically? He takes the transaction, details the amount, Jack's public address, and runs it through something called a hashing algorithm.
Yep. Think of hashing as creating a unique, fixed-size digital fingerprint for that specific transaction data. Even a tiny change in the input creates a completely different hash.
Okay, so you get this unique fingerprint, then what? Phil uses his private key to encrypt or digitally sign this hash. Is that right?
Precisely. That digital signature proves two things: that the transaction came from the owner of that private key, which is Phil, and that the transaction details haven't been tampered with since he signed it.
Gotcha. And this signed transaction is then sent out onto the network using Jack's public key.
Well, it's broadcast to the network, and Jack's public key identifies him as the recipient. The crucial part is that only Jack, using his private key, can actually unlock or properly receive and verify the funds sent to his address.
Okay, so the private key signs it, the public key directs it, and only the recipient's private key can truly access it.
That's the essence of it. And it's worth noting, different cryptocurrencies might use different specific hashing algorithms. Bitcoin famously uses SHA-256. Ethereum uses one called Ethash. The principles are similar, but the underlying math can vary.
Interesting detail. So transactions are flying around, signed and verified. But who actually bundles them into these blocks and adds them to the chain? You mentioned miners.
Yes, miners play a critical role. They are network participants, often with specialized computer hardware. They gather up pending, validated transactions from the network.
The ones waiting to be confirmed.
Exactly. And they compete to solve a very difficult mathematical problem related to those transactions and the previous block.
This is the proof of work thing.
That's right. It's designed to be hard to solve, but easy for others to verify once a solution is found. It requires significant computing power, hence work.
And the reward for solving it first.
The miner who finds the solution first gets the right to assemble the next block, add it to the blockchain, and is rewarded with newly created cryptocurrency. For Bitcoin at one point, that reward was 12.5 new Bitcoins, though it halves periodically.
Wow.
And that whole process, validating transactions, solving the puzzle, adding the block, that's what we call mining.
And once that block is added, everyone's ledgers update, wallets reflect the new balances for all the transactions in that block.
Correct. The chain grows longer, the ledger updates across the network.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting for me. This blockchain technology, it's not just about digital money, is it? I read about Walmart using it in a completely different way.
Ah, yes, the supply chain example.
Yeah.
It's a great illustration of blockchain's versatility.
Right, so Walmart apparently had this big problem. Lots of returns, refunds, because products arrived damaged or spoiled. But their supply chain is so complex, from the farm to storage, transport, processing, distribution, finally the store shelf. They couldn't easily figure out where things were going wrong, whether the transport, the storage conditions.
Exactly. Pinpointing the failure point was incredibly difficult, so they implemented a blockchain solution. Essentially, at each key step in the supply chain, data about the product's condition, its temperature, its location, whatever was relevant, was recorded onto a blockchain.
So like creating a block for each step.
Sort of, yes. An immutable record was created at each handover or stage. So if a batch of, say, mangoes arrived spoiled, they could instantly trace it back through the blockchain ledger. They could see exactly when and where the temperature logs went wrong or where delays occurred.
Ah, so instead of guesswork, they have a verifiable, time-stamped history for every item.
Precisely. It allowed them to identify the specific weak points in their supply chain and fix them. It brings transparency and accountability to incredibly complex systems.
What stands out to you about seeing this technology applied outside of just finance? It really shows the potential, doesn't it?
It absolutely does. It highlights that blockchain's core value proposition, creating trust and transparency through a shared, immutable record, has applications far beyond currency.
Okay, let's circle back then to the advantages of crypto as currency compared to traditional methods. There's this anecdote about two friends, Frank and Daniel, booking a trip to Venice. They find a great deal, but it's limited. Only the first 10 bookings get a discount. Daniel tries paying online with his card or bank transfer. Transaction fails. He misses the discount.
Oh, we've all been there.
But Frank, he pays instantly with Bitcoin. Transaction goes through, no problem. He gets the discount. So Daniel's asking, how did you do that? Mine failed. And Frank points out all the likely culprits for Daniel's failed bank transaction. Maybe he hit his daily transfer limit. Maybe the bank's server was down. Maybe security flags were triggered. Maybe the fees were too high and got rejected. All that stuff we talked about earlier.
Right. And Frank's Bitcoin success highlights the contrast. Cryptocurrency, being decentralized, avoids most of those issues. There's no single bank server to go down. It's peer-to-peer.
Free from third-party interference, as the source said.
Exactly. It's not issued or controlled by a government or a central bank, so those kinds of institutional bottlenecks or limits often don't apply in the same way. A properly initiated crypto transaction is generally very reliable.
And the costs.
Typically much lower, often near zero, or very low transaction fees compared to traditional international transfers, for example.
Plus, no arbitrary limits. 247 access.
Correct. Your money is accessible anytime. There are generally no upper limits imposed by a third party on how much you can send. International payments are usually just as fast and cheap as local ones.
And it seems easier to get started. Less paperwork.
Generally, yes. Setting up a digital wallet is often much simpler than opening a traditional bank account in many places. It increases accessibility.
And just to reiterate, the crypto part means it's all secured by
Cryptography, that complex system of encryption and decryption that protects the transaction data and controls the creation of new units. Security is built into its very name.
So when you put all that together, the decentralization, reliability, low cost, accessibility, what does this really mean for the future of how we pay for things?
Well, it's already having a huge impact.
You can see that. Cryptocurrency adoption has exploded. It's influenced so many people globally. And big companies are jumping in, like May2, PayPal. They're investing heavily in crypto.
Definitely. And even countries are getting involved. Remember Malta? Back in 2018, they leaned into blockchain so heavily they were nicknamed Blockchain Island. It reportedly brought them economic stability and attracted huge fintech players like the crypto exchanges Binance and OKX to set up headquarters there.
Wow.
It's genuinely revolutionizing parts of finance. Anyone with an internet connection can potentially trade, spend, or even borrow globally, often bypassing traditional financial gatekeepers. That's a massive shift.
But it's not all smooth sailing, right?
Yeah.
There's a big debate going on. You have major figures, tech leaders like Bill Gates, Elon Musk, basically saying, this is the future. It's better, more secure than physical cash.
They see the potential for efficiency and maybe even more stable global economy in the long run.
But then you have equally big names, giants from traditional finance like Warren Buffett or Ajay Banga, who are deeply skeptical. They raise concerns about it being used for, criminal activities, money laundering.
Right, the anonymity aspect worries them.
And they argue it could actually destabilize the world's economy, not improve it. They see it as speculative, lacking fundamental value.
It's a stark contrast in viewpoints.
Yeah.
And honestly, this conflict, this tension between the crypto world and the established financial system, it feels like it's going to be around for a while yet.
Absolutely. So we've really covered a lot of ground here. We started with those everyday payment frustrations, saw how cryptocurrency and blockchain emerged as a potential solution, decentralized, secure, global. We unpacked how blocks record transactions, how they link into that immutable chain, that shared public ledger, and we saw how miners secure the network through proof of work. Plus, that fascinating Walmart example showing blockchain isn't just money. It's about trust and transparency in complex systems like supply chains.
Right.
So hopefully you listening now have a much clearer picture of what these technologies are, why they matter, and the kind of impact they're having. Understanding the fundamentals is, well, it's pretty powerful.
It really is.
So here's a final thought to leave you with. We've seen blockchain is designed for decentralization, designed to cut out the middleman, right? And we see this ongoing tension between this disruptive tech and the traditional financial institutions who, well, are the middlemen. Given that fundamental conflict, how do you think this push and pull will ultimately shape the global economy And maybe more importantly, what will it mean for your individual financial freedom in the years to come? Something to definitely keep thinking about.